Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our Frosty series. I guess that's what we're calling this? Today I'm going to concentrate on expanding out and exploring this new planetoid and also try to start ranching some of these Floxes. And a lot of people in the comments are wondering why I call them nightmare fuel. I think it's because they're a combination of a bunch of different animals, and the antlers are just downright scary. But you do have to admit they look really cute when they have their tails together like this. In order for us to start ranching them though, we still have quite a bit of ways to go with Freya and her skill points. But that's okay because there's other things we could be doing to freshen up this colony. And the first one involves the wood heater. Unknown to me until I read some more detail inside the patch notes, apparently they've also reworked the lighting system where dupes don't care about very dim light when they're trying to sleep, which means we could actually move these beds right next to the heater. There was also a little bit of discussion inside the comments concerning tiles. I made the comment in the last video that I didn't understand why they separated out the wood tile, to which people were saying, well, it's an insulator and a slow heating tile, plus it gives off a little bit of decor, so that's the reason why it's different. I would argue though that even a standard tile that's built out of different materials have different effects. Some have more decor, some have better insulating effects. And while I was looking at all this, I did discover the fact that yes, you can even build tiles out of snow, which is pretty convenient. So I'm going to go down here and recapture the wood that we used for this tile because our wood is very important. No wood means no wood heaters. Put a little snow tile here and here. But around our bedroom, since we do have a heater here, I think I will sort of isolate this out with nice looking wood tiles. Something like this. And I know that's a lot of wood being spent, but we're going to be able to capture a lot of the wood we spent on all these ladders since we now have access to granite. So I'm also going to have the dupes do this in their spare time. And now we don't have to worry about wasting wood on our ladders, and instead we'll use the granite. But back to the discussion on the tiles themselves, my theory on one of the reasons why these are separated has to do with the blueprints. My guess is that we're eventually going to see tiles here in these blueprints, just like we see different wallpapers, and that way we'll be able to design different looking tiles. So that would make sense because then you could have different styles of wood along with different styles of regular tiles made out of minerals. It would also be really cool to see different designs on snow tiles, maybe with little dupe prints in it. Also, in the interest of saving wood, I'm going to get rid of this wood heater here. Freya doesn't care about the cold, and Naz really doesn't either now that they have their warm coat. Another update is I've done the math on the aloe vera. The long math short of it is, if you want to sustain your colony on nothing but aloe veras, every duplicate is going to require 3.33 plants or 10 plants for every 3 dupes. And the reason being is a standard dupe, i.e. not a mouth breather, consumes 100 grams of oxygen per second. Well, every cycle is 600 seconds. That means each duplicate breathes 60 kilos worth of oxygen per cycle. Well, the aloe vera plant produces 36 kilos worth of oxalite over 2 cycles for a rate of 18 kilos per cycle. And with 4 duplicates means I'm a little bit short on the plants. But that's not the only problem that you have to deal with when it comes to sustaining your colony on these plants. And it has to do with the fact that, yes, they require ice, but they also require carbon dioxide, 2,000 milligrams per second, which is the same exact amount as one duplicate exhales. So while currently this colony requires a little over 12 plants, we're only producing enough carbon dioxide for 4. Well, that's not entirely true because we are getting 4,000 milligrams per second from this wood heater, which means we're getting enough carbon dioxide for 2 more, but we're still left with a requirement for 4 more plants worth of carbon dioxide. Well, it just so happens that I have a plan for that too. Right now we're researching ranching, and that way as soon as Freya has that skill point, we'll be able to start in on the Floxes, and there's a very specific reason on it too, because ranching those Floxes is going to be critically important for this next step, and that's going to be researching the wood burner. The wood burner creates carbon dioxide at a rate of 170 grams per second, which means one wood burner running flat out is enough to feed 85 of the aloe vera plants. But they also eat a lot of wood at 1200 grams per second. As a comparison, the wood eater only eats 25 grams per second, which means it would take 48 wood heaters to use the same amount of wood that a wood burner would use. And I realized I said wood entirely too many times in that sentence. So we could put a bunch of wood heaters down here so that we're creating enough carbon dioxide to keep all of these aloe vera plants fed. And it would be more economical, especially considering our dwindling wood pile. But considering the fact that right now we're just using a wheel, and the fact that we can get more wood from the Flox's antlers, that's why I think the wood burner is the direction to go. Now with that being said, there is something else that you have to take care of and consider, and that's the fact that the wood burner creates heat. 9,000 DTUs to be specific. So we're going to be careful with where we put the wood burner. In fact, I think the further away it is, the better. What about over in here? This area is still nice and chill, and it has a nice little slope here that the carbon dioxide could follow and eventually hit our plants. And there's no ice here to melt. There is some snow though. Of course, I'd be willing to bet it would take a long time for that wood burner to heat this whole area up, so maybe we just file that under a future echo problem. I'd also like to move this little room around. I really don't like how it's off-centered from everything. And although I do enjoy the fact that we're sort of building around the environment, since we're now domesticating our aloe vera plants, there's not a real big reason to do that anymore. So despite the fact that the dupes just spent all of that time building this, I think it's time to move it around. Sorry dupes, no good sleep tonight. Research is complete on this ranching step here. I'm thinking about grabbing animal control because we will need the incubator, but I can hold off on that for now. And while I do need the wood burner, we are also going to need a smart battery. That way we're just not burning the wood flat out, which means I'm going to need some refined metal. I suppose we can also start digging towards that area. So I will do something like this, and I will make the tunnel tall enough. That way the carbon dioxide can flow around easier. Oh, JM Mort is not having a good night's sleep. Whereas Freya, I don't think minds too much. They're sleeping on a snow tile. JM Mort is sleeping on a ladder and shivering. Sorry, buddy. The new barracks is not done yet. We did get a snazzy suit inside the next blueprint, but that doesn't really help us out too much. But because I'm not interested in any of these dupes, we're still going to grab the snazzy suit. The one question I can't seem to find an answer to, though, is whether the snazzy suit's insulation thickness of 0.25 does anything to fend off the cold. I don't think it does. I think there's a minimum amount of insulation, as evident of Nazgul's warm coat being 0.8 centimeters thick. In fact, it may not even be based on math. The game could just be saying, if the duplicant has a warm coat on, they will not get the chilly surroundings. We are starting to suffer from a lack of calories, so I am going around and digging up some of these shareberry plants. The issue is we don't have any more pike apple seeds, and with it taking 4 pike apple bushes to feed one duplicant, we're sort of behind the power curve on that fact. But there are some seeds and some plants over here, so we might as well just ladder our way up, and while we're there, we can grab some of these wonderful shareberry plants and dig up all this nonsense. And that should give us a lot more of the pike apple seeds. And those seeds should be enough to get us up to the amount that we need. But if not, we can still go digging down here. There's quite a few shareberry plants and even some more seeds. I also suspect we're going to get some seeds while digging through this area because there is a bunch of buried objects. I was wondering what was going on with the progress of this. Unfortunately, we're out of granite, so I'm just going to go dig up some more. Oh, there's even some more here. I do like the fact that this DLC does make you reconsider what you're doing with your materials. In the past, on standard planetoids, you're not really worried about where the materials are coming from for things like ladders. With our wonderful barracks done, I am going to move our ice liquefier up here because the wood does have that insulation effect, although truth be told, it is kind of far away from the supercomputer. And I also realized the duplicants are going through the bathroom just to get to the supercomputer. Who designed this colony? All this just to get a well-lit buff for the supercomputer? Research on the smart battery and the wood burners is complete, but we're also going to need a rock crusher to be able to make refined metal. So we're going to grab it next, and then I'm going to need some automation wires So we'll come back down here and grab interior decor and smart home, which reminds me, we didn't even build a place for the duplicants to eat. So I'm going to pause research for a minute. And that way the duplicants can get caught up on everything else that needs to be done. For instance, going to get more food. Ooh, there's some oxalate in here. Which reminds me, I wanted to update the priority on this storage bin. It was at a 5. We changed it to a 6. And that way the duplicants will be in a little bit more of a hurry getting this oxalate where it needs to go. Notice we've kind of chewed through most of the carbon dioxide, and as such, some of the aloe veras aren't even growing, which means we're not creating oxygen, which could pose a problem in the future. I do like how a lot of these biomes start with a bunch of carbon dioxide for that very reason. In fact, if I bulldoze all this, it'll release all this carbon dioxide and feed the plants for a little while. And just like that, we have enough seeds for our pike berries. Why do I keep saying pikeberry? I've had to re-say the name of this plant like 6 times during the recording of this video. Pike apple. But this means we can go ahead and plant some more. And all said and done, we're only short 3 pike apple seeds. I do not want to dig down into here to grab them, but I suspect we're going to find enough in this dig here. But this represents all the food we need for our duplicants. The only issue is they require phosphorite. We do have 15 tons, and the pike apples only require 5 kilos per cycle, which means we have enough for 3,000 pike apple cycles. There's a unit of measure I've never said before. So with us running 16 pike apples, we have enough phosphorite without digging anything else for over 187 cycles. So I'm okay with this setup right now. I am keeping an eye out for a cook, but I did think it was funny that the game is trying to give us an oxyfern seed. I'll take it, but doesn't mean I'm going to use it. Sorry, oxyfern, you've been replaced by a superior model. While the dupes are continuing their dig over to where our power supply is going to be, ooh, look, it's the bunny elephant, aka the mammoth, who incidentally, by the way, will be giving us reed fiber in the future. And on top of that, they excrete mammoth patties. Well, we can take those mammoth patties, put it in a rock crusher, and there's our renewable source of phosphorite. We're also doing the build for our mess hall. Nothing crazy here, we're just going to put a wood heater in there. And the reason why the room is this size is because, well, that's the size of a room that the wood heater can heat up. So while the duplicants are eating, they'll be nice and cozy. At least until I find all the warm coats. But we'll also need a flower pot. Maybe one at the entrances. Oh, look, doesn't this look nice so far? And then a few mess tables. We can predict that we'll be up to 6 duplicants here soon. And we're getting the unreachable food. There is a shareberry plant here. Come on, duplicants, you can't wait until some of the pike apples are finishing. We've got several that are at 90%. I think they'll be fine. And I just realized the duplicants couldn't actually reach their bedrooms because they were sleeping on the floor again. Knocking this one out of the park, I really am. Okay, Luke, I am genuinely confused. How you got stuck in here? The doors don't even get you there yet. What in the world? Okay, Luke just teleported. That's the only solution. Luckily, there is a little bit of oxygen that they can reach. Come on, buddy, you've got it. There you go. See, you're gonna be fine. Just like the printing pod said. Since we're going to be putting a bunch of heat in this area, I think I'm also going to end up putting the rock crusher over here. We did finish its research. I don't love how far away it is, but they're going to have to drop off wood here anyways, which means I'm also going to have to run the power line all the way over there. Something like this. We've also got our skill points ready, so Freya's going right into critter ranching, and we'll give her her new hat. JM Mort's going to grab, I suppose, another point and do improved carrying too. Naz is getting some better digging, although we don't necessarily need to dig out abyssalite quite yet, so maybe improved construction would better serve Naz. And Luke's going into field research, but this also means it is time to build our ranches. I suppose I can finally fix this weirdness. I'll put the oxalite right by the bedrooms, use a nice snow tile. In fact, we'll end up building most of this ranch out of snow tiles, considering we have over 33 tons of it. Now, I don't think we're going to start off with a full ranch of Floxes, but we will at least build the ranch as if we are. So when it is time to grow the Flox population, we will be able to. But we'll probably start slow, considering I don't have a lot of duplicant labor right now. We need our wonderful grooming station, except we will definitely be using the new rustic grooming station. because it is perfect. We'll need a critter drop off, and then we're going to need food for the Floxes. And taking a look at the Flox's database entry, we can see that they eat 20% of a pike apple bush per cycle, which tells us that one pike apple bush will feed 5 Floxes. So just 2 bushes is going to be plenty for a full ranch of Floxes. Oh, I don't want to put those there though. I am forgetting something, and that is the shearing station we're going to be using to trim their antlers. And here's our adorable little ranch, all completed. We're going to select Floxes and Flox fawns, and select 8 critters. The pike apple bushes are already growing, so we are safe to move some of these little guys in here. Here's 1. There's 2 right there. I suppose I didn't need to do move 2. I could have just gobbled them up with a wrangle. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 seems like a good start. Now over at the rock crusher, it is time for us to get some refined metals. We do have 100 kilos worth of copper ore. Not exactly sure what we deconstructed to grab it, because there is no copper ore here. Notice the effect says the mercury is a liquid, which is going to pose a problem because it doesn't turn into a solid until minus 38.8. And while it's chilly here, as soon as we turn those wood burners on, well, they would end up melting whatever we made out of the mercury. So we need another metal. Now there is the uranium ore here, but that seems very wasteful. But right where we are digging already, there's a bunch of iron ore. This is exactly what we're going to end up using. In fact, there's more right here. There's some right here. Look at the Floxes getting their antlers sheared. They definitely don't look like nightmare fuel once they're sheared. They look like cute little bunny foxes. Each Flox that we shear is going to give us 360 kilos worth of wood. And that will happen every 6 cycles, which gives us a total of 2.8 tons worth of wood every 6 cycles, or 480 kilos per cycle. It really stings to have to use iron ore for refined metal, but we've got to do what we've got to do, so I'm thinking 10 ought to be enough for now. That'll give us plenty for the smart battery and the automation wires. And in the meantime, we'll also build a couple of wood burners. I'm going to try to tuck them as far over here as possible. Taking a look at the cinnabar ore before I built the wood burners, they don't liquefy. They just go straight from ore to gas. And that doesn't happen until 583. So I think we're okay to use the ore here. We'll put a couple of wood burners in there. I'll put a storage bin to collect some wood that you apparently can build out of ore. I don't want to build the storage bin out of ore. I'd rather build it out of granite. That's a new change. Next up is our smart battery. I'm probably going to end up expanding how many wood burners we have. So I'm going to move the smart battery over here. And now we just need some automation. Oh, this is going to turn out wonderful. And then silly me forgot to put in the wire. And that'll be it. I've got the smart battery set to 9060, which should be perfect. Automation's already in. And I have the storage bin here set to collecting wood. And eventually we'll have a nice auto sweeper here that'll take the wood from the storage bin and feed the wood burners automatically. But for now, we'll use dupe labor. And you may think it's a little silly putting all this way over here, but to be honest, I don't think it's far enough away. Oh, what is this? A cool salt slush geyser coming out at minus 10. Very nice. But I may even end up moving this further away eventually because, well, if you look, this area is already fluctuating between what, minus 6 and minus 20. This is at minus 3, minus 2. And things like our Floxes, while they can live in minus 60 to 100, are comfortable in minus 30 to 10. And our pike apple bushes are going to straight up not grow if it gets warmer than minus 14, which means both the Floxes and our dupes would end up starving. It's also the reason why I'm trying to be careful with how much I dig out, because the longer you leave these tiles in place, the longer the chill's going to stay. Because remember, every time you dig out a tile, you're losing 50% of the mass, which also means, in the case of, for instance, this ice, you're losing 50% of minus 25.6 degrees. Oh my goodness. The pod has given us pip eggs. Let me see one thing. The pips can live in minus 30 to 100 degrees. If we take a look at our temperature overlay and set it to minus 30, we can sort of estimate how the pips will end up doing in here. For instance, this area here is only minus 25. The pips can live here, which means I could pip plant the aloe vera plants. Yeah. Sorry, little pips. It's going to be a little chilly when you first hatch. Our wood burners are online and already generating some beautiful carbon dioxide. Look at the little train of carbon dioxide that'll continue to float down here and all the way down into our aloe vera plants. I am going to keep the manual generator around, but I set it to 20%. I don't think we're ever going to end up using it. I think the wood burners will be plenty good, but I don't want the excess heat created by this jumbo battery, so I am going to remove it. Oh, we're off-gassing polluted water. I need a place to put all this polluted water, preferably where it'll just sit there and freeze. Yeah, this area looks good. This also reminds me that we do have the materials to get rid of the polluted dirt as well. So I think I'll put it right there. Now, the compost does generate heat, but I want to make sure it's right next to a sink because the dupes are going to get dirty by handling all that polluted dirt. Oddly enough, though, they don't get dirty handling bottles of pee. And slowly but steadily, the polluted water is freezing into polluted ice. It happens at minus 20 degrees. Research just finished up on the incubators, and we need these for the floxes. They are cramped right now because there's eggs sitting in here, which they're a little hard to find with all this debris. They look like little fur balls. Here's one. Standard incubation rate of 5% per cycle, which means it'll take 20 cycles to hatch. The floxes live for 100 cycles, so each incubator will be able to, without being powered or lullabied or anything, be able to give us 5 floxes in that 100 cycle timeline, so 2 is plenty. Now the next thing we need is the egg cracker to get rid of all the excess. Unfortunately, right now we don't have a grill to make those eggs into omelets, but we don't have a cook either, so no big reason to have a grill. But I will put the egg cracker in, and hopefully we'll be able to freeze the raw eggs until such a time that we get the grill and the cook and turn them into omelets. When doing this, we have to make sure we put the incubators on a 6. And that way, the duplicants are guaranteed to load the incubators before they bring all the excess over to the egg cracker. So we'll just put forever on the Flox Fawn eggs. And conveniently enough, the raw egg is frozen, but it is losing 4% per cycle because it's in a normal atmosphere. Well, I can fix this too. Now our ration box is in a sterile atmosphere and it's deep frozen. We'll make sure we select raw eggs, and now their change rate is 0% per cycle. So we'll definitely be able to save all those until we can make them into omelets. This colony is coming along pretty nicely. We have our barracks, we have our mess hall. What do you mean mess hall? Oh, I'm missing a recreation building. We'll fix that later. We also have our wonderful Flox stable up and running, giving us wood. Then we're taking that wood, putting it into wood burners, providing us power, but also, and more importantly, giving us carbon dioxide, which is then being eaten by the aloe vera plants. But this whole system hangs on the balance based on temperature. If it gets too warm in here, this ecosystem crumbles. It's going to be interesting trying to hang into that balance of making sure everything's cold enough to continue that ecosystem versus reverting into old habits. I'm looking forward to seeing how this colony turns out. Hopefully you are too. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.